If you're listening to this in a dungeon, perhaps following on from last week's discussion of the book Catch Me If You Can about Frank W. Abagnale, the con man who ended up in a very harsh French prison. It wasn't a dungeon, but the way he talked about it, he made it sound like a dungeon. So if you're listening to this in a dungeon and you're not a prisoner, you just happen to have a dungeon, you have some sort of legitimate reason to either own a dungeon or be in one. Perhaps your boss owns the dungeon. Perhaps it's a naturally occurring dungeon in a cave somewhere. Perhaps you're a potholer. Are you a potholer? Well, if you are, my respect for you has instantly gone out the window. My concern for you has gone up 1,000-fold. I did a whole episode here that had potholing in the name, and it wasn't very complimentary towards that pastime at all. No. I know we all end up buried in the ground, but we mostly don't end up buried alive, as far as we know. Hopefully we don't anyway. Every modern cemetery presumably has a system where there's an emergency alarm you can press if you do wake up underground. So no, if you're in a dungeon, perhaps you're playing that game Dungeons and Dragons, which I know very little about, but I do remember there was a cartoon of that name in the 1980s. They had a very small kind of magician-type fellow who was bald but had long grey hair at the sides. He was some sort of wizard or warlock or something. An amiable fellow by all accounts. Well, I say by all accounts. I mean, that's the impression you got of him by watching the cartoon. I don't remember anything else about that cartoon. I just it was called Dungeons and Dragons. In fact, I heard nothing about Dungeons and Dragons after that for about another 20 years until I found out there were nerds who played Dungeons and Dragons. It's considered a very, very, very nerdy thing. I don't know what's involved. I don't think it actually involves potholing or going into real dungeons. It certainly doesn't involve dragons because they don't exist. They don't exist. Well, there might be things called dragons, but they're just firefly type thing or something. Someone caught a firefly once and decided to call it a dragon, but they're not real dragons. The nearest we have to dragons in this world is dinosaurs. As far as we know, they didn't inhale fire or exhale it. In fact, more humans have inhaled or exhaled fire than dinosaurs have. So if anyone is close to being a dragon in this world, it's humans. Dinosaurs weren't going around smoking. They weren't smoking or eating fire for entertainment purposes. No, they were not. They were not. Well, as far as we know, someone came along about 10 years ago and announced that dinosaurs, including the Tyrannosaurus Rex, probably had feathers like a bird and looked ridiculous. So you don't know. You don't know what they're going to discover about them next. It's hard to find any archaeological remains of a fire, though, other than the ashes. You don't know what they were up to with the fire. We humans hadn't discovered fire, but that doesn't mean it didn't exist in those days. I know humans didn't discover fire until we'd been around for a while. But that doesn't mean it didn't exist. Fire existed before we discovered it. Just like America. America existed before we discovered it. It was there for a very, very, very long time. And the same is true of fire. In fact, all evidence points to the possibility that there was fire here before there was even a planet. There was a big ball of fire. In fact, the sun, wait, isn't the sun fire? No, the sun is fire. The moon isn't fire. The moon is just a ball of salt or something, I think. You might say that's ridiculous, but you grew up thinking it was made of cheese. You allowed your children for some time to think that it was made of cheese and that there was a man living in it and that the man who lived in the moon was somehow a friendly, positive character. No, if you're a hermit who's so anti-person that you go and live outside of the planet, you're the most hermetic person ever. You go and live on the moon. It's very unlikely that you're friendly. I don't mean that as a criticism. You haven't had any opportunity to learn any social skills, so you're not likely to be a friendly, positive character. You're maybe well-meaning. In fact, you're probably even more well-meaning because you've decided, I'm not a positive, friendly character. I'm going to extract myself from the planet and go and hide on the moon where I can't cause any trouble. And that's one of the kindest things you could do for your fellow human. If more hermits did that, more hermits did that, they would still just be hermits. They'd just be further away. But if more non-hermits did that, that would be a good thing. He decided, I'm just bringing misery with all of my interactions. I should go and live on the moon. I know I'm making a noise with my hands at the moment, so I'll just finish what I'm doing with my hands before I continue. There we go. Let's put that down there. Nothing important. There was fidgeting. I was fidgeting. I'll be perfectly honest. I was fidgeting with something. I have put that down and stop fidgeting. I have a desk lamp that's a very flat base. I use the lamp at angles at which it is not designed to extend. So I put an extra weight on top of the stand, and I have this weight stuck to the base with self-adhesive pads, and they were coming loose and I was fidgeting with them. Now they're completely separated and they're in a ball on the side of my desk. So that should be the end of that now. Except now I'm absent-mindedly reaching for the weight that's on top of the lamp stand. Put that down, me. Leave that alone, for Christ's sake. For one thing, you're going to waste another half sheet of adhesive pads rectifying that. So no, stop doing that. Stop doing that and concentrate on what you're doing. What am I doing here? Oh yes, we all go on about these dragons. We say, oh, dragons were great. They were absolutely fucking fantastic. They went around, they built up a bowl of hatred and anger and fury in their chests until it turned into fire. And they kept that bottled up inside them for as long as they possibly could. And then eventually at some point they'd breathe it out through their nose and then burn someone to death. At least they let out their anger. They let it out before it became toxic. Wait a minute, is the fire from a dragon toxic? I suppose it probably depends on how long they keep it in. They bottle it up a little bit. They treat it like a cat treats a hairball. They build it up until it's a reasonably significant amount, and then they cough it up. So it's the same with a fire-breathing dragon. Whatever rage and anger and literal fire they have building up either their stomach or their lungs, we don't know. And there's enough of it, they cough it up just like a hairball, and they make good use of it, I presume. At least in the fairy stories, they used it to burn someone to death. Although, wait a minute, did they? I'm trying to remember. I know there were dragons in fairy tales I read as a child. I can't remember if they involved the dragon putting it to good use, maybe helping the famous five, helping them catch a burglar by burning him to death. Wait a minute though, that's summarily executing a burglar. That doesn't sound very wholesome for a children's book. But you have to remember the famous five was written by Enid Blyton. She's rather a controversial figure, so there's that.
Into your head, into your head, into your head, into your head.
If you're listening to this while standing in the middle of an airport runway, perhaps you're cleaning the runway, perhaps you're cleaning the white line in the middle. Is there a white line in the middle of a runway? I think there might be. I know it's not like a road, but there might be a line in the middle, and that's where you want to keep your center front wheel focused on. Because these planes, they're designed like those old little 3-wheel cars you used to see. There used to be little cars that had just 3 wheels. They weren't very common, but there was one particular make of car in the 70s and 80s. It was a little van made famous by a sitcom called Only Fools and Horses. You had a little van and it had 3 wheels. In front it had 1 wheel in the middle. And planes are designed like that, and that's considered perfectly fine for some reason. 1 wheel in the middle, and then at the back they have wheels out at the sides or something, or are they on the wings? I forget. I suppose it's either that or have 1 wheel at the front and 1 wheel at the back, and it operates like a motorbike. And that's fine if you're in the air, because it's easy to balance the plane when you're in the air. That's what the wings are for. But when you're on the ground, that's not going to stay up. You're going to need stabilizers, and then you just look ridiculous. Or you think you look ridiculous if you're a pilot who worries about things like appearance, which isn't important at all. Safety is more important. So if for some reason it's the case that planes work better if they have motorbike style wheels where there's 1 in the middle of the front and 1 in the back, then you should do that and not worry about whether it looks ridiculous. because you're a grown adult in control of a plane. You shouldn't worry about these things. It's ridiculous. Absolutely fucking ridiculous. That said, it's probably the case that they work better with one wheel in the middle and two at the back at each side, which is how it is now. They probably settled on that because they thought this is the most sensible way to do it. And that's fine. I have no objection to that whatsoever. I'm just saying, if it was the case that planes work better for some reason with two wheels like a motorbike, then don't just decide not to do that because you're afraid of looking silly. No, it's more to life than not looking silly. We worry about the appearance of these things too much. Your plane doesn't have to look cool. It just has to get you from place to place as safely as possible and not crash into an ocean somewhere or run off the runway prematurely or late. No, when the plane is on the ground, it needs to be thinking about taking off. Stop worrying about what they all look the same anyway, these planes. They all look exactly the same. Every last one of them. They all look like a paper aeroplane. Make a paper aeroplane right now, if you can remember how to do it, and have a look at it. Every plane you see in an airport, every commercial aircraft looks exactly like that. Exactly like that. It's just heavier. They'll tell you these planes are made of the lightest possible materials. They're made of some magical fiberglass that was created using some system that makes the lightest, strongest materials known to man. Do you notice they're never made of paper? No. You were a paper aeroplane there, you just made it. It took you about 2 minutes and it flies perfectly. You just throw it across you don't even run along the runway with wheels or anything or build up momentum. You just throw it and it literally flies. Not for very long, admittedly, but neither did the Wright brothers. Their first plane flew for about 30 seconds and then crashed, and that was considered a great success. And the whole aviation industry was built out of that. I'm sure you can develop something based on a paper plane that would be great. To be able to have a plane that weighs absolutely nothing and then just put as much luggage on it as you want. You can afford to take as much weight as you need because the plane itself weighs zilch. Everyone can bring up a suitcase full of lead and it won't matter because there's plenty of capacity for it. So that'll be great. So do that. Now, if you're on a ship, I don't know if you can make a paper boat, can you? I don't remember. Did we make paper boats? I think, oh yes, no, we made paper boats. We just didn't put them in the water. And it was more like a paper hat. You could make a paper hat out of a piece of newspaper very effectively. I think one of my parents used to make me a paper hat and they thought they were making a paper boat. It was being taught to them as a paper boat, but it was in fact a paper hat. It never occurred to me to try and put it into the water. No, because I was a child. I understood the world of make-believe. You pretend there's water. You don't put it in actual water. No, that wouldn't work with a real boat. You couldn't say, oh, we're building a new Titanic. It's an unsinkable Titanic because it's never going to go into the water. We're going to use imaginary water. No, that will just be a replica. Now, they'll tell you can't put anything into water. It'll sink. Everything you put into water, it just sinks down to the ground unless you get a spoon and stir it, and then it just blends into the water and it becomes indistinguishable from the water. It's like the salt in the water. You drop a sugar cube into water, it just disintegrates. You still feel an urge to stir it because you don't know if it's merged properly with the water. You can't really tell because it's disappeared. So you stir it anyway. You think, I don't know where all this sugar is going. If I stir it furiously, that'll cause it to be distributed evenly to every segment of water in there. I don't know why you think that. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever logically. No. Just because the sugar is invisible, that doesn't mean it's equally dispersed everywhere. No, it could be hiding somewhere. It could be hiding under, I don't know, maybe there's an area of the water that's not transparent, but it's reflective. So it's like hiding behind two-way glass. You notice something when you're buying beverages in a bar or a coffee shop. They never give you a glass that's made of two-way glass, like the type you use in a police station when you're watching someone being interrogated and the other cops are sitting outside watching it through the two-way glass. They never make beverage glasses out of that. I don't know, it might be fun. I suppose it'd be a bit like one of those eternity pools. You look at an eternity pool, it looks like the sea is just coming up on you. The sea is coming up upon you and you're just in a section of the sea It's being walled off. You can't really tell where it ends and where the sea begins. Just everything looks like you're in a glass cage that's about to over. Wait a minute. What's an eternity pool? I forget exactly what an eternity pool is. All I know is every time I've seen one on the television or in a picture, it looks terrifying. Eternity pools are terrifying. They look terrifying. They are terrifying. I would not go to an eternity pool to relax because they're terrifying. If some sort of weird setup, you have a pool outside some hotel, maybe it's on a cliff or it's surrounded by the sea or something, you could easily just overflow, end up into the sea, and just flow out with the current, and that's the end of it then. Why would you go into an eternity pool? You wouldn't. You would not. It would not. It'd be, ugh. I have an itchy face. That's how I feel about eternity pools. I have an itchy face. So, infinity and eternity are not the same thing. People don't seem to realize that. Infinity means the deepness never ends. You just get deeper and deeper and it never ends. Eternity means you're just there and you exist everywhere in time. Presume in terms of water, you exist at every level. I know I haven't explained that very well. Difficult to explain it very well. That's why no one understands it. Even those of us who understand it, there's a difference between eternity and infinity. You can't explain it. So why would I be able to explain it any better? No, I'm not an educator. Ask an educator for the difference between infinity and eternity and tell them I don't mean in a religious sense. I mean, what's the difference between infinite and eternal? And see what they do. See if they start scratching their face, or if they just kind of look nervous, or if they just look confused, or if they just have a blank look on them. They have a blank look. Now, how we decide whether it's a blank look, I don't know. A blank look could be their whole face becomes invisible. It looks like it's just a blob of skin. Now, all faces look like that to me, unless I'm very, very, very uncomfortably close to your face. Your face looks blank to me. A blank face, when we rub close and it's still blank. There's no eyebrows and there's no hairs on the eyelids, so all just looks like skin. Your nostrils are healed up and you've no lips and everything's just all skin. That's what a blank face would look like. And not many people can manage that. But just because they can't physically have a blank face, that doesn't mean there can't be nothing going on in there. Someone could have nothing going on in there, but they're not able to display the blankness on their face because their face just isn't well equipped like that. You need a face that can look blank. And they don't have a face that can look blank, so they have to find other ways to do it. I suppose that's why the young people use emoticons and smileys. They realise the limitations of their face. If I want to look blank with my face, unless I shave my eyebrows off and remove my lips and heal up my nostrils and paint my face so it's all exactly the same tone, I can't express blankness on my face. So I put an emoticon that's just a big head that's all skin with no face on it and no features. So I suppose that's why they have emoticons. I understand that now. That makes sense. Because it's rather presumptuous to think that people can just express everything using their face. We're not all made the same. I realise that now. I tend to judge people who use emoticons a lot. They think, oh, why don't you just do that with your face? Well, maybe you can't do that with your face. Everyone doesn't have a face that can do everything. No. Some faces can do some things. Some faces can do other things. Some faces are just shit. They're just shit. And there's nothing to blame the owner of the face for. Just their face doesn't do as many things as your face does. The lottery of life, they got a face that doesn't do much, or they got a face that does too much and they're not able to do a blank face. They just can't. So I suppose there's that. So they have to express themselves in other ways, such as, for example, when someone goes, what the fuck? Or they go, WTF in a text. WTF. They're doing that because their face isn't set up to express swear words like that, for one thing. They don't know how to do that with their face. I suppose you could raise your eyebrows, but not everyone has eyebrows. And lots of people have eyebrows, but they don't move very well. maybe eyebrows just aren't fashionable sometimes. I'm sure there have been several times in the last 40 years when eyebrows went out of fashion for a while and people just went around shaving their eyebrows or plucking them out with tweezers. I'm sure there's that as well. So you have to remember, a lot of these young people, they're slaves to fashion through no fault of their own. It's not their fault. Slavery is involuntary, so you can't blame these young people for it. They're slaves to fashion. They've been enslaved against their will. Some trouser company has come along and said, oh, you're going to wear denim from top to toe and you're going to have a blank face on you. And if you can't do a blank face, don't worry. We've made a denim balaclava that you can put over your head. Don't worry. We'll make it so it's made of denim and not wool or something, so people won't confuse you for being a member of the IRA, not least because the IRA went away about 25 years ago, unless someone's stuck in the past. That's possible though, because I've been reading some books by that psychiatrist recently, who Robin Williams played in that film, and he worked with people who had memory problems whereby their memory got stopped at 1963 or something, and this was 1982. And you go and visit them and they say, oh, hello, how's JFK getting on as president? And they'd be stuck like that, and that happens to a lot of people. So you might go up to someone and they say, hello, are you from the IRA? And you'll say no. And I say, oh, because last time we spoke, you were in the IRA. And you'll say, no, that was 25 years ago. And you'll say, no, that was just yesterday afternoon. In fact, it was 5 seconds ago. In fact, you're still wearing the same T-shirt you were wearing. And you will say, no, I think your brain is broken. And invariably it's not. You're just taking advantage of them to try and lying your way through it. You were in the IRA less than 5 minutes ago. You're trying to trick these people into thinking they're mentally ill. Anyway, fashion changes every 5 minutes, so I'm sure there have been plenty of times during the last 40 years in pop culture where it was fashionable to have a blank face, or where it was fashionable to have a face that just has a denim balaclava over it, so every inch of your body was covered in denim. There was holes for your nostrils and maybe for the center of your eyes and your ear holes, to leave holes for their fingertips and these all over denim garments, because you need your fingertips just as much as a cat needs its claws. It's cruel to cut a cat's claws off. It's also cruel to cover up a teenager's fingertips. They need those to type emoticons, and you need emoticons especially if you're covered in denim from top to toe. Your face is blocked out by this material, which you have to wear for as long as it's fashionable, and then when it becomes unfashionable again, then you can stop wearing it. But until then, you're a slave to fashion. There's nothing you can do about it. I'm in need of a urination session at the moment. Well, I'm going to wait until I'm off air, so to speak. Listeners from the very early days of this podcast know that I used to do an occasional segment called the urination session of the week. Now, despite the title, it wasn't a weekly fixture. I would do it whenever I felt the need during a podcast, which happens quite a lot when you drink a lot of energy drinks. In those days, there used to be an energy drink, pretty much the same as the one I drink now, an own brand supermarket energy drink. But it used to come in a 1 litre bottle. So there was none of this drinking 1/4 of a litre out of a can, then getting another can and drinking that, and then getting another can and drinking that, and then getting another can and drinking that. No, you'd have a bottle that had a litre of energy drink in it. You could just guzzle it down, have no idea how much you'd drunk. Wasn't very good for pacing yourself. Has very good value though. You drink that, you guzzle that down. What you realise pretty swiftly is that you'd be going around. I used to go around recording around the house on portable voice recorder. Headset had my head, so I'd walk around the house, and whenever I felt a need, I'd wander into the bathroom and I'd say, it's time for the urination session of the week. And basically, I'd piss, and that's what I thought was entertainment in those days, the very early days of this podcast, 20 years ago. We've moved on, just as every other entertainment sector has moved on. We no longer have these sitcoms where everybody just sits in their sitting room that for some reason has a stairs coming down through it. and watch people coming down the stairs and having their breakfast, and then people coming to the door, the neighbours, and then just mostly sitting on their sofa talking. No, sitcoms now. Well, firstly, there's no laughter. You have someone in an office somewhere. Instead of Frasier and Cheers, we're in an office because that's what the young people want. They want people sitting in offices with no laughter and just being miserable, having a miserable time of it. People come home from their work now and they want to watch half an hour of Steve Carell having a miserable time, trying to make the best of a miserable career in a depressing office with no fun people in it at all. None of those people are fun. They're all cunts in the office. Don't be fools. Don't be fooled. Your man with the messy hair who keeps looking at the camera, he's as much of a gobshite as anyone else you'll ever work with. He just seems more fun because he's on the television. But no, I'm sure the man who plays him is perfectly fine. Well, no, a character. If you had to work with him in an office, you would hate his guts. You would hate his guts. The first thing you'd probably find when you started in that office was that he probably has a smell of him or something, or he has some irritating habit of snapping his fingers every time he picks up the phone or something. And you're not allowed to bring that up in the workplace. No, in the workplace, you're supposed to just ignore that. You come in and you say, good morning. That's what you're supposed to say. You're supposed to talk posh when you work in an office. When you get into work, you stand at the door and you take off your coat and you go, good morning. How are you? Did you have a pleasant weekend? And they're supposed to say, yes, I had a pleasant weekend. Thank you very much. Not that it's any of your business. They'll be thinking, why is this fucker asking about my weekend? It's none of his business. He's not my godmother. He's no business asking what I did at my weekend. In fairness, he didn't ask what I was doing at my weekend. He just asked, how was my weekend? So I suppose I can just say, oh, it was pleasant, without giving out any proprietary information about my home life. So I suppose, wait, proprietary information? And you have proprietary, you specifically designed your life in a unique way, using a unique design prototype for your lifestyle, which you hope at some point to put up for sale. You hope to make this to retire at some point and make this proprietary information about how to live a nice life available for sale on the internet, perhaps as an audio book. So maybe this proprietary information, the information about how you spent your weekend or whether it was a good weekend, that might be proprietary information that you should put a value on, and therefore not just hand it out to the first person who goes, how was your weekend? No. Now be polite. You can say, I'd rather not say, because I hope at some point to turn this proprietary information into a product that I can sell so I can get out of this godforsaken hellhole before the age of 65 or before it kills me. Because that's what you want to do if you're in an office. Your first priority if you're working in an office is to get out of that godforsaken hellhole before it drains every ounce of uniqueness out of you. You want to get the hell out of there. Nothing wrong with the work you're doing. The work you're doing is probably fine. You're probably creating a cure for cancer. You could probably create a cure for cancer in an office. If you have the right level of expertise, perhaps there's some clerical work involved in the search for cancer. You have to go through all these numbers. They give you a list of numbers that they found while they were going through the genome that need to be analysed, no matter how boring. It might be very, very, very important work. So don't let anyone tell you that it's not important work, wherever you're doing there. It's just tremendously boring and life-sapping. Zaps all the life out of you. Looking at these figures, all these figures, rows and rows and rows of figures on a spreadsheet, saying, oh Christ, someone come along, kill me, or invent an AI that can do this for me so I can be put out of work and therefore out of my misery. That's what you're probably thinking. Try and be positive. Think this is great. That's what you be positive. Think this is great. I'm sitting here at a computer. I love sitting at a computer. It's great. You can do great things. I'm sitting at a computer right now, arguably. I'm sitting at a tablet and I'm sitting at a phone. They're both on the stand facing me. I could be creating a cure for cancer right now. Right now, in my digestive system. The coffee that I just drank could be creating a new chemical reaction with some other shit I had for breakfast that inadvertently creates something that kills off cancer cells. That could be happening right now inside my system. And then I could be the first person who cures cancer if I figure that out. That's all I'm saying. While you're sitting there in that miserable office, Nelson Mandela could come back from the dead. Oh, wait, how would I? No, forget that. So I should say, stop whining about your office job. It's perfectly fine, despite the fact that I think I've just told you it's not perfectly fine, it's killing you. No, it's perfectly fine. You're going to die eventually anyway. So you might as well be doing it at a desk, looking at a screen, tapping stuff into a keyboard. Pretend it's a musical keyboard. If you're typing for a living, imagine you're at a musical keyboard. You can do this. You can type away absent-mindedly doing all your typing. And in your conscious level of your brain, you can be imagining you're typing into a piano. Because when you type stuff into a piano and magical stuff happens, you can come up with magical melodies. You can come up with, what's that thing the man came up with? He came up with this. Yesterday, all my troubles seem so far away. Paul McCartney did that on a keyboard. He was asleep when he did that. He had a dream and he woke up with that in his head, and he spent the next year apparently asking everyone, have you heard this tune before? Did I come up with this independently in my sleep? Because it sounds like I made it up. It sounds like I stole it. I don't trust myself with this shit. So he spent a year freaking out about this fucking song that he came out with. And even then, it turned out to be a great success. People listened to the song and they said, oh, I'm sure he came up with that independently while he was asleep. Perfectly normal. He came up with a masterpiece while you were asleep. I'm sure he's, either way, became a mega millionaire. So it was fine. So you could become a mega billionaire just tapping away on your screen there. Just like Elon Musk, the owner of Twitter X. He's just become the world's first trillionaire. He spends his days typing. He goes type, 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 type on his phone into social media. He goes type, 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 type. And he's a trillionaire now. He was a billionaire when he started typing. Now he's a trillionaire. So he's probably signed up to some get-rich scheme that he found on the internet. I don't know. I don't know where these people get all their money from. I don't know. I presume it comes from somewhere legitimate. Maybe he amassed €1 billion and then he sold shares in that. He said, I have €1 billion. I'm going to sell shares in that. My €1 billion, I'm going to float my €1 billion on the stock exchange and people can buy shares in that. And as a result, I'll become a trillionaire. And of course, the next step after that is going to be a problem. Because when you're a child, you learn the term million, and you learn the term billion, and you learn the term trillion. But then you learn a load of makey-uppy stuff after that. Some kid will tell you, oh, after a trillion, it's a zillion, and then it's a gillion, and then there's a gazillion, and then there's mahillion, and that's all made up. In fact, the trillion thing could be made up for all we know. You don't know where the real word stops and the makey-uppy world begins. Is there such a thing as a trillionaire? Because I was in the news just yesterday that elongated musket has just become the world's first trillionaire. I thought trillionaire was a made-up thing. Maybe it's not. Will they be saying next year that he's the world's first gazillionaire? And at what point will someone challenge this and say that's not a thing? Gazillionaire is not officially a thing. It was never a thing. Another thing I remember being told as a child was that $1 billion is different in America than Europe. I think we were told that in America, 1 million is only 100,000 in America and 1,000 everywhere else. But I haven't heard that since then. People have just stopped saying that. So what's that? I suppose I could look it up and find out. I'm not going to do that. I'm busy typing. I'm typing away. At the moment, I'm typing into my elbow rest. I've got my elbow rest here on the desk. I don't happen to be leaning my elbows on it at the moment, so I've got my fingers on it. It's actually very comfortable for putting my fingers in. I've just discovered kind of got these dents in it, kind of dimples, and my fingers feel very comfortable in there. So I'm tapping away on it as if I'm typing. Not really achieving very much, but at least it's not that noisy. So it's a good thing to fidget with that doesn't make noise when you're doing this. So that's good. think that's good. It probably is.
Are you going into your head?
I feel we're talking about dogs a lot lately. And the reason I feel we're talking about dogs lately is that just before I started talking, I noticed that a pre-scheduled video that I made about dogs had just gone out. And there's another dogs video still there from a couple of weeks ago. It's all dogs all the time. It's getting like this veterinary surgeon from Cork, the Super Vet show, who does all these things to dogs, usually involving inventive surgeries and devices that he adds to replace bits of broken bones and hinges and things, all sorts of contraptions. If any of these dogs ever has to go through any sort of serious airport security, they're all going to get detained. I've been through airport security. I don't have anything metallic in me or any hinges or any fancy apparatus. But I've been through airport security in Canada, and they held me there for about an hour. They decided, oh, that's a young fella travelling on his own. He's clearly up to no good. He's clearly either trafficking drugs or planning to murder us all in our beds. So if we hold him here for as long as we can, then we have a good excuse not to go to bed because we'll be stuck at work here. We just keep him here and we'll go through all of his luggage. We'll take it apart limb by limb. We'll take his luggage apart limb by limb, inch by inch, row by row. That was a song, wasn't it? There was a song. You foreigners won't be familiar with it. And the vast, vast majority of my fellow Irish people probably won't be familiar with it either. But there was a song on the radio in the 80s. Here we go. Inch by inch, row by row. Oh, to make this garden grow. All you need is something and a hoe and a piece of fertile ground. Now, what was that in reference to? Oh, yes. Canadian airport security. No, actually, it wasn't security. It was customs. Customs was the main thing. What's this fella doing? He's singing some sort of agricultural song as well, by the sounds of it. Is it some sort of traditional thing? I don't know. From wherever God-forsaken hellhole he's from. Where's he from, anyway? Well, his passport says he's from the European Union, but he has an Irish accent. He's going on about inch by inch, row by row. I presume that means he's from a very, 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 very dense city where every inch matters. He probably lives in wardrobe that's 3 inches by 4 inches. I don't know. And some other fella will say he's singing about planting vegetables or something in a field. Now, they wouldn't do that in a wardrobe, would you? No, I don't think you would. And the other fella will say, oh, you know what he would grow in a wardrobe, though? And someone else will say, no, what? And then he'll say, well, if you don't know that, you shouldn't be working here. I thought we vetted all you. You all did an exam on how to figure out whether someone is growing drugs in their attic or their wardrobe. And they'll say, no, we're not attic and wardrobe searchers. People don't bring their attic or their wardrobe with them through airports. We have nothing to do with that. That's a whole different department. The police look after that. We just worry about what they have in their pockets. And it's unlikely that they have a wardrobe or an attic in their pockets. And then the boss, of course, will say, oh, that's true. You have a good point there. I take that back. I do apologise. I lose a run of myself sometimes. I go, oh, Christ, this fella's probably got an attic in his pocket. Well, when I say he's got an attic in his pocket, I should explain. What I mean is I think he's got drugs growing in pocket lint, in a pocket. Probably not the main trouser pocket the traditional jean trouser has, or the traditional trouser has. No. That would be too obvious. He probably has it in one of those pockets that chinos or whatever you call them have below the knee or just above the knee. They have additional pockets in the legs. If you look down there, he probably has them down there, or maybe he puts them in his socks. Do people still put things in their socks? I remember when I was younger, when I used to travel on my own, I used to put some spare money in my shoe. Between the sole of the shoe and the lining of the shoe, I could put €100 in there, just in case all hell broke loose and someone robbed every inch of clothing and money off me. think I stopped doing that after it occurred to me one night in my brain as I was thinking about it, that when you go through these airports, they'll probably x-ray every inch of your body, and if you have something hidden in your shoe, that's going to be a problem. So I stopped hiding stuff in my shoes then, except when I was going to college. I think I continued to hide it in my shoe when I was going to college, just in case I lost a bus ticket or a wallet or something. I don't know. That seems quite sensible to me now. Although now my shoes all seem to wear out very quickly, so I'd have to inspect them regularly to make sure that the place where I put the money didn't have a huge hole coming into it, that the inner lining hadn't slipped out. Shoes, I find, aren't as secure as they used to be. At least not for me. My shoes wear out very quickly. But I don't replace them as quickly because I don't have anywhere important to go. I suppose that doesn't really make sense in this context, does it? No. It's actually runners. I haven't worn a shoe in about 25 years. I don't do shoes anymore. I think I stopped doing them that time I nearly broke my fucking neck walking on ice. I said, fuck this, I'm getting whoever has the best grip on them. The only reason to buy shoes is if you have a job and they expect you to wear shoes around the office. Because for some reason, when you're in an office, the first thing people see, apparently, supposedly, is your feet. Everyone's going around looking at everybody else's feet. Even in the back office where there's no customers. Nobody ever said to me, you have to wear proper shoes. But no, apparently, it's the done thing. You wear shoes. And then I think at one point I realised you could get runners that are black and that look reasonably respectable and that pass off as shoes. So I think I wore them for a while. I know it's not obvious why that would be an advantage to you. What that does for you is that on your way to work, when you're walking down to the bus stop at some ungodly hour down the hill, or when you're walking from the bus to your office, what that does for you is help reduce the chances of you sliding down on some frozen puddle of crap. So that's what I found was the advantage of runners over shoes. If you're walking into the city every day, that's one advantage. The first thing you notice when you're walking in the city is how much of a grip your current shoes have. So you notice when they're wearing out. You find, oh, these are a bit slippy today. I'm going to go straight up to the large branch of Dunn stores in the city centre either before I go to work or at lunchtime and get a brand new pair of these cheap, shitty things. Problem solved. Now, if you're not doing that, you're just wearing your shoes around the house and barely going anywhere, the first thing you don't notice is that they're worn out. And you don't notice that until they start to smell. And they start to smell because you've been walking around on shit, going out to the bin, walking on wherever you spilt behind the bin, but not noticing because you've lowered your standards somewhat. Wait a minute, this is nonsense. As I've been saying lately, is it good enough nonsense for this program? I don't know. Suffice to say, shoes. Not all they're cracked up to be as far as I'm concerned. Why do people wear shoes at all? I don't know. If I was running an office, I'd say, oh my God, you're wearing shoes. Have you got some sort of a death wish? That's like if you saw someone with a motorbike refusing to wear a helmet. Polished shoes. You're literally bringing a polished surface attached to the underside of your foot, so that anywhere there's not a polished surface, you immediately turn it into a polished surface by turning yourself into a polished surface. So even if the floor isn't slippy, you're slippy, so the floor slips on you. It's like an upside down thing. The floor slips underneath you and you trip over and you fall on someone. Oh, you don't want to do that. The last time I slipped was about a year ago in my kitchen. I was carrying a pot of water. I think I spilt a bit and then I slipped on something, went crashing down to the floor. I hurt a rib on me, not anyone else. No one else got harmed, so that's good. I was sore for a week. You don't want to be doing that. You don't want to be doing that. And if you're saying, oh, actually, I haven't thought about whether I want to be doing it or not, you're not in a position to say that I don't want to be doing that. How would you know? I haven't expressed one way or the other. Well, I'm deciding for you now. You don't want to be doing that. You don't want that. You don't want to be slipping on your kitchen floor, almost breaking a rib, not able to lie on your side properly for several days because God knows what you did to yourself. No, don't be doing that. So what should you do, I wonder? I suppose it's not really about what you should do, it's about what you shouldn't do. Stop wearing shoes for one thing. You've no business wearing shoes around your house unless you run a church or something and you say, this is a house of God. I'm going to wear shoes in this because it's disrespectful. It's disrespectful to go around in anything that isn't slippy. You need to wear the most dangerous footwear possible. Otherwise, you're being disrespectful to God in his own house. The one thing God can't abide is people wearing safe footwear in his house. Now you might say, runners aren't that safe. For one thing, they create smell. They stink and they smell. They collect up muck and dirt from whatever field you're going around in playing hurling or football or basketball. Do you play basketball in the field? No, you don't. What else do you play in the field? I suppose you can play counting sheep. I counted sheep once with my uncle. I was about 7 or 8. I think he kept a more accurate count than me. I think I was just copying him. He was going 7, 8, 9, and I think I was just copying him. As a child, you mimic everything you see. That's how you learn language. That's how you learn how the world works. You just mimic everyone. So if someone's going 7 sheep, 8 sheep, 9 sheep, you just go 7, 8, 9 sheep. And then he goes 10 sheep and you go 10 sheep. And he goes 11 sheep and you go 11 sheep. And he goes 12 sheep and you go 12 sheep. But you're pointing at different sheep. That's the problem if you're counting sheep with another person, you see. You don't know which ones they've counted and which ones you've counted. You need to do separate counts if you're going to do that. Or else trust one of you to do the count.
Into your head.
Anyway, if you're going down into one of these dungeons, perhaps you're an archeologist and sometimes you think, I want a break from all this digging and sifting through layers and layers of clay and soil and sand. I want somewhere that's already being dug. So you find a dungeon, a cave that's being dug by Mother Nature. Or if maybe you find an old coal mine that's being dug by people who are probably earning far less than you because they were employed for their willingness to sacrifice their health for 30 years and then die in their 50s. You're an archeologist. You're some fella who turns up in a fancy sun hat. You probably wear one of those straw hats. I've never met an archeologist as far as I know. Not in real life anyway. Or in fiction. I've never met an archaeologist in fiction. I've never been in fiction. I've never been in the fictional world, in any fictional world of any kind. Oh, have I? Unless you count the ghost train. I was in a ghost train once. I suppose that's a world of fiction in a way. I was in the ghost train as an audience member. I was on the train as a passenger. But I was also in a nativity play, which I suppose, well, fictionalized dramatization that some consider to be history. Well, it was fictional in that I wasn't really an innkeeper. I was pretending to be one. I was pretending to be an innkeeper. There's 3 innkeepers in the nativity play. I was the 3rd one. And Jesus's parents would go along to each of the innkeepers. They were looking for a place to stay, so that they wouldn't have to stay in some stable with a load of filthy animals, because she was going into labour soon. She'd go up to the innkeepers and say, you're an innkeeper, do you have somewhere for us to stay? And the innkeeper would nod their head. So I was one of the innkeepers. I nodded my head, and that was the end of my part in the play. And after that, I vomited. I vomited and vomited and vomited and vomited, and I was off school sick for a week after that. That was the end of my acting career. I don't know. Maybe I was just diametrically opposed to the subject matter of the play. I don't think so, though. I had nothing against Jesus at the time. I was being raised as a Christian in this Catholic school. It wasn't like it was being pumped down my throat or anything, as people like to call it. No, it was fine. It wasn't a problem for me at the time. I was about 8 years old. This was a school. They were telling me all this Jesus stuff, but they were also telling me all this Santa Claus stuff, so it was fine. It all worked. They were also telling me about Fionn McCool and the mythical, magical salmon of knowledge. And they were also telling me about the ancient Romans. And they were also telling me about how to add numbers together and form them into a bigger number, and then how to subtract a number from another number, and how to write nice curled up writing. Wait a minute, did we do cursive writing at that age? Maybe we did, maybe we didn't. Actually, I think we didn't at that early age. No, we were too young to have joined up writing then. We were told, no, write each letter separately, give each letter its own separate universe. They don't have to be connected at all. So then we went from one extreme to the other. A couple of years later, they had us all getting cartridge pens. If you write a book, you touch your pen to the page and then it shouldn't leave the page until you get to the very end. Everything should be one continuous line. You should be able to write hundreds and hundreds of lines without ever lifting your pen up off the page. Well, that wasn't entirely true because you have to do a full stop after each sentence. You'd use various punctuation that wouldn't be part of it. If you put a comma and it's part of the cursive, it just looks like a tail on something. So I presume you were allowed to lift the pen up off the page at some point. Between words, for one thing, because the words weren't joined together. The letters in each word were joined together, but the words weren't. So no, I'm talking nonsense when I say you write your whole book without lifting the pen up off the page. Of course, that would be ridiculous. Even Stephen King wouldn't do that. He writes 8,000 words a day. Even he lifts his pen up off the page. In fact, he uses a typewriter. So that's clearly nonsense. So no. And what else did they teach us? They taught us a lot of stuff. Well, not They taught us how to open up our mouths and ask to go to the toilet in Irish. In fact, you were expected to ask in Irish. If you asked in English, can I go to the toilet? The teacher would rebuke you. She'd say, no, stop using your normal tongue to talk about things like toilets. No, don't speak to me about toilets in English. We'll have none of that. We'll talk Irish. Because this is how you learn Irish. You wait until you're bursting at the seams with either urine or diarrhea or possibly vomit. Wait until you're so desperate that your brain forces itself to remember how to say it, and that's how you learn it. That's how you learn Irish. It's a very healthy way to do it. Work up the courage to put your hand up, and then you have to say, An will ciadagum, dolgadi an leheris, marshe do hole, avuntor, or something along those lines. May I go to the toilet, please, teacher? And she'll say, yes, you may. And you'll say, I beg your pardon? And she'll say, I said, yes, you may. And you say, excuse me, I think you mean tá ceadagat. And she'll say, oh yes, that's right, of course. I should reply to you in Irish so that I don't sound completely unreasonable. She'll say, oh, you're right. I'll say it in Irish next time. Thank you for correcting me, learned child. Now off you go to the toilet. Don't forget to wash your hands before you leave the classroom, because it's a filth. Nothing but filth in here. Every time you come in here, you get a cold. First day in September, first thing that happens when you go back to school after the summer break is that you get pneumonia. The first thing that happens, my wife used to teach, first thing that happened the first day in September, she'd come home and she'd give us all pneumonia. It probably took 20 years off our lives. So no. But they even use books still in school. Presumably they put it all on a tablet. And if you're the victim of school bullying, you have to get a new tablet every 3 days. But at least your glasses remain intact, because they say, oh no, glasses are meaningless nowadays. If you're carrying a €600 tablet to school every day, you don't have to worry about the bullies taking your glasses and smashing them. No, they'll take your tablet and smash it instead. At least you'll be able to see them doing it. But still, your whole school career is on your tablet. You have all of your school books on it. You got every piece of work. Your whole primary school portfolio is on your tablet. If you lose that, you're in big trouble. You hear occasionally about some author or some professor whose laptop got stolen and they lost everything because there's no backups. Well, if you're a child, you're not going around backing up your tablet every 5 minutes. I presume now there are children who get their tablet stolen or broken or lost, and that's the end of their school career. They end up just being expelled. And if they're not expelled, they leave voluntarily, which at that age you're probably not allowed to do. It's probably illegal to drop out of school until you're 16 or something. If you're 8 or 9 years of age and you lose your tablet or laptop or whatever you're reliant on, you'll have to go and illegally work down some mine shaft. You have to go into some illegal child labour for the rest of your childhood. Unless you manage to get another tablet, I suppose. Maybe wait until your older sibling finishes school, which they might be a few years ahead of you. So maybe if you hang around for a couple of years, they'll be finished. You get the hand-me-down of their tablet and then continue your education from there. There's nothing wrong with hand-me-downs. If you're a kid and you're getting hand-me-down stuff from an older sibling or from your father or from your grandfather or from someone else, it's not a problem. It just means it's being worn before. It's nothing to be ashamed of, especially if you keep your mouth shut about it and don't tell anyone. No one has to know. Just tell them, yes, this is mine. We got it in a shop. We went to a rather old-fashioned tailor and got this. It's old and traditional. It's fine. It's not a hand-me-down. Oh, don't tell people it's a hand-me-down. That's all you have to do. All you have to do is lie. Learn to lie. Learn to lie. That's what you do. If your kids are going to their first Holy Communion and you're worried that they mightn't like a hand-me-down blazer, tell them to learn to lie. It's okay to lie if it's a white lie. It is a white lie. Don't worry about it. It's fine.